Q2, clear takeoff, left hand. Takeoff left, it is 3 points. Left land, swim west, copy. 3 points. Crossing 24. Crossing at 24 is
Hello and welcome to the Blueskies Podcast. I'm PR Ganapati, your host.
Just 70, Roger, report type southeast, connection, 364, submit right, and view selected.
It's my great pleasure to continue our series of conversations with test pilots who've been involved with the development of the LCA Tejas. And today I'm speaking to Group Captain Ritu Raj Tyagi. Group Captain Tyagi has a long list of achievements. He was commissioned in the fighter stream in 1986, flew for 24 years before moving from the Air Force into the National Flight Test Center to continue his work on the LCA. While he was in the Air Force, he commanded the prestigious 14 Squadron, Jaguar Squadron, and has flown many different types of aircraft. He's a qualified flying instructor as well as a qualified experimental test pilot. Welcome to the program, Group Captain Tyagi. Thank you so much for speaking to me.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
We like to get to know our guests by just hearing where they grew up, what their background was, what is their motivation to join the service, and what was some of the initial training aircraft that you flew, places that you were based at before you became a test pilot and got involved with the LCA program?
Yes. So, I start like a normal. My father in central government, so I started my schooling in Kendra Vidyalaya, and I completed in two Kendra Vidyalayas, Delhi and Dehradun. And for my graduation, once again, I moved to Delhi University in Ramjas College. And then, my school was next to IMA. The Kendriya Vidyalaya FRI, where I did my class 12 from, was next to IMA, and I used to see a lot of students in our class who used to get very motivated to join army. And in holidays also when I used to come, and there's a lot of army means retired and as well serving officers living all around this place where I live in Vasant Bihar. And so it was looking up to them, and we used to call them uncles, and they used to take us to trek to Missouri sometimes and go with them. And so, and while I was doing graduation, I happened to apply for the Combined Defense Services examination, and in that time we saw a movie called Vijeta, you know, and this was a first movie, and that really fascinated me. Like they say, when we are kids, all of us sometime or other want to become pilots. You know,
Very
so
true.
that is that kind of thing. And my boss used to say that, and some never grow up; they actually go and become pilots. So,
Very true.
so I saw the movie Vijeta and was inspired, but that inspiration or that kind of thing is separate. But yes, getting selected through CDS and then qualifying through the SSP and then clearing the medical, and then thereafter making it the merit, because there are very few seats in the Air Force. About I remember 8 or 9 seats for the direct entries at that time, and I was hard work, whatever you call it. I was able to make in the merit of first five in the UPSC, and that's how I landed in the Air Force. And my Air Force knowledge was very rudimentary. Even then, I thought the FP, which I'm applying for, means fighter pilot. Although it was flying pilot.
Right.
So you see that from that kind of a background, it is. And yes, and joining Air Force was like formation for me, and joining and thereafter flying training, and I came very close to being thrown out of flying during my initial training because so the stress and other thing, and survived. And thereafter there was no looking back. And when after I graduated in 1980, we passed out in 1986 and joined Hunters. That's when actually I thought there is something in life which I really enjoy and I'm reasonably good at.
Right.
So that was a real awakening for me, in terms of getting to know myself. And not many people are lucky to have a profession which they enjoy, and which they feel that they can do it to their satisfaction and to the other satisfaction as well.
Right, right. Marshal Rajkumar used to once tell me, he said, I can't believe that they actually pay me to do this. And I think
Yeah,
a lot of you
true,
will say the same thing because you all enjoyed your profession so much.
true, true.
And then you went from hunters to jaguars, I believe. Sir.
Yes, hunters or jaguars. And I feel that I've been singularly fortunate. Only two people used to go to jaguars, and I was third when we were in OCU. And somehow there's one more vacancy came up, and I went to 14th squad. Another two guys, my course mates, they went to the 5 squad. And previous course, only two people went to jaguars. And I saw jaguars when I was as a cadet in Jamnagar. It taxied in, and I looked at the aircraft, and it was, oh, I just couldn't believe that such a beautiful thing can exist. It was taxiing with that engine sound, and the pilot was that time flight was Mata. He showed us the aircraft, and I said, "Oh, I wish I could get F1 day flight to fly this aircraft," and it came true. A couple of years later. So that was something really amazing.
It is a very beautiful aircraft, yeah. And then FIS, and then you did a instructional tenure also at Air Force
Instructional
Academy.
tenure, and then instructional tenure. I was there for 1.5, 2 years, and from there itself, that was in 1996 when I applied for the test pilot course and uh, got selected. And
What
then
was the thinking? Why did you choose to go down the test pilot path? Because it would take you in a slightly different track from the career fighting squadron kind of a path. What was your motivation?
you see, somehow, I met people like, incidentally, Wing Commander Rajiv Kotial was my instructor in Bidar. I was a student.
Okay.
You know,
Uh-huh.
and we'll talk about later. And the kind of people I met who were test pilots, like Ajit Agde, Sheikh Howard. There was some people whom I came across. Many people who were test pilots. When I was my formative is in Air Force, and I said, my God, these are the kind of people whom I like to be. As a human being, as a professional, as a senior officer, whatever you call it. So I'm not generalizing. I'm just saying that the test pilots whom I met inspired me. I looked up to them. I said, oh, wow, what it would like to love to go through that kind of a course which made them like this. And so I just want to do one course as a test pilot course, and applied for test pilot course. Moment I became I earned enough qualification for it. 7 years of service, 1,000 hours of flying, green rating, and everything. And I went there, and Harish Nani was the STFI there,
Okay.
and
Uh-huh.
and he said, "Son, you are too young." and please do some professional course and come. Although I did reasonably well in my selection written examinations and all those things. And he said, listen, you why don't you do the instructional course or FSL or something, some course, and then come back later. You have enough age in your hand.
Right, right.
And so that's the only thing I want to do actually, in the Air Force. And to do that, I had to undergo qualified flying instructor course and come back again 3 years later for the selection.
Right, right. How did you find the test pilot's course, and which aircraft did you preview at the end of the course?
End of the course, it was MiG 29, and test pilot course is like it's like I would say a good marriage. You hate sometime and you love sometime. So and somehow you go along together. And thank God it's for 1 year, right? So there are moments you hated. Why did you volunteer? Because things got really rough sometimes. And I was the only one with two children doing the course.
Oh, wow.
Instructors didn't have two children that time.
Right.
My daughter was 3 months old when I joined the course, and I had a son who was 4.5. And my wife at home. So, and we were living in civil in that area close to Vignana Nagar with Kacha roads and this thing. I had only two-wheeler. And coming back sometimes in raining and and trying to not to let your two-wheelers that Chetak, good old Chetak skid,
My God.
was sometimes frustrating, sometimes enjoying. and so I would say it was a kind of, there were moments like they say, yesterday's what you call tough times are today's good old
Right,
times.
right. Definitely. I think, it's that picture you just painted for us. I think, for a lot of the audience who think fighter flying and test flying is all about glamour, I think, um, outside the cockpit, one has to live normal lives and, like everyone else. And so that, thank you for that.
everyone else. And test pilot course is minimum 12 hours a day of work. You know, when everyone packs up 6 o'clock evening, you sit and you start. And for the tomorrow's preparation, briefings, and this and that.
We heard about the report writing and the studying, and yeah,
So report writing, I stayed for 2 days in school building to complete my final report,
wow.
and I didn't come home. I said I'll come back with my report, and and I came back at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I told my wife, please wake me up at 7 o'clock. I go and I got to go and give this report to my instructor, who was now A. Marshal Tiwari, who is the present deputy chief of staff. So, and my wife, in the morning, she said she didn't wake me up. She took the report, took her sonny, went to his house, and said, I came to give this report because I wake him up, he'll start doing something and start correcting something. And it was lying in that envelope, and he said, here's the report. And he was quite shocked to see my wife early in the morning at his doorstep. But that's the way life is. These are the incidents you remember later in life, you know. So, and we had a good fight when she came back. I said, why didn't you wake me up?
Okay, and so I presume after that you spent some time in the flight test squadron and the TP school.
Yeah, 2 years in TP, the 2 years in flight test squadron, and 1 year in test pilot school. After that, 3 years after completing my course. And those 2 years, once again, like I say, that I've been fortunate. I was the only pilot with Jaguar background that time,
Ah,
and there were a lot of projects on Jaguar.
hmm,
So the lifting integration, the Delta radar integration, the weapons which were integrating. So I was means I had my hands full and mouth full also. So that was a good time in FTS. Very busy time. I did a lot of detachments which is made for weapons and other things.
mm. In fact, we were interviewing AVM Nanotkar, and he was saying that whenever the Air Force gets any new weapon system, the Jaguar is often the platform of choice to test it on and integrate it with. And so I can understand you would have had a lot of work.
Yeah. So that was nice.
Great. So fast forwarding a little bit, sir, to the LCA, what was your first encounter with it? And was that when you were posted to NFTC, or even before that, were you involved in some way with the program?
LCA, no, not before that. Although when 2001 and then the first flight happened, and he was across the runway when the flight, and every pilot's test pilot's dream is to fly a prototype aircraft, and we all dreamt that. And incidentally, in 1994, when I came for the selection, I came for selection. Commodore Harish Niani was STFI, and that time, right now, A. Marshal AP Singh, A. Marshal Vikram Singh, and Commodore Maulankar, right? They also came for selection in 1994 along with me when I was sent back, a- and and the CTP that time, Ajit Akte said we were all standing in a class that, and there was a LCA model in the cupboard. He said, one of you lucky will fly LCA, and among all those people in that classroom that day, I see how many have flown LCA.
Yeah, wow. And in fact, part of this series of interviews, I am speaking to Commodore Nani as well as Commodore Maulankar. So it's fascinating that you say that.
And I was doing my staff college in 2003 to 2004. And from there, you ask for posting, and I choice posting. And normally, for my seniority, people were going for the command of the squadron, and I wrote NFTC, and said I want to fly LCA. You know,
Wow.
and then the from the peace star, the hero had come to listen, son, you should be going for your command now. From there you can come to NFTC. Other thing. I said, sir, means whatever the case may be, if choices, you should be interested in your career. But it's not that I'm not interested in career, but there are certain things beyond career too. For to fly LCA is will be my first choice. He said, are you sure? And he told me, there are two. Uh, I remember there are two things in life. There are two strategies in life. One to get what you want, and one not to get what you want. I hope it doesn't happen like that to you if you get this right. I said, no, sir, I'm very sure what I want. And at
Right,
that
right.
time, fortunately, Group Captain R.K.S. Paduria, and later on, who like previous chief, he was the boss there at that time. And although we have never worked together, but being in Jaguar, he knew me whatever little. And he said, okay, send him here. So that's how my stint with LCA started in 2004, and we were doing FSD phase one. I think we had done some 60 or 70 odd flights that time.
Right. So for the audience who don't know what FSD is, can you just explain that phrase?
Like it was full scale engineering development, and that time the thing was there was a sword that like we have to prove certain technologies, and then the further sanction for the program will come, you know, and rest of the world felt in any case that we are wasting our time, you know, including quite a few in the Air Force. And sincerely, when I came here, I also came, like it's a research and development program. See what you can do. We never had this notion that this aircraft one day will be inducted in the Air Force or it has to be operationalized or what. We were just, I think, and the same thing with ADA and HA. Although there was excitement, there was thing that we are doing something new and exciting, and we were doing it after a long time, so we didn't have any template to follow, and it was good and interesting. But if I look back correctly and I can remember that time, we didn't have this kind of vision. Of course, there were steps. We were determined to get this engineering model to prove this FSD phase one so that we can qualify for full scale development. Right. And the initial flying was, I would say, quite limited in terms of envelope and what you could do.
Right.
Right. And I remember first time, I think that time the bank angle limitation was 60 degree when I did my first solo way back in on July 2004. So, and 3G was the envelope at that time, 16 or 14 angle of attack. And so it was very, in terms of flying part, it was, I would say, just short of boring, right?
Right. Yeah.
And you went up, you did something, some that flutter test points and other things, and trying to do something, and it was very difficult for me to understand, what's the final name of it, you know. But it was good to be in this kind of atmosphere. It was good to be, the flying was less in that. I was once again, in during that time because of FSD, we were accelerating flying, and I could fly in that one year. I could fly 44 sorties, which was quite a bit.
Wow. Okay.
In one year, almost every week I flew one. That was quite a bit by standard for those times. And so 2000, and then from there I went because I could stay only for one year. Then I had to go for command to 14th Squadron in Bala in 2005. So that was my initial lucky break with LCA.
Right. Right. Okay. Great. And was that when you encountered those landing roll problems, or was that when you came back?
Yeah, it was there in that time, and later on also it was there. I was the most difficult part for me was landing role.
hmm So just, I know, I think the LCA is a little unique in that it has a brake-by-wire system and also steer-by-wire. And so, can you explain what the landing roll problem was and what were you experiencing? What are those sorties like?
You see, in the landing role, my main problem was that moment I used to land, and there was a tail shoot to there was a tail shoot to augment the problem, which used to go in what they call wobbling. You know, it used to go and wobble around the circles behind the aircraft. And if and the nose wheel steer law which was there, which defined the nose wheel steer, the way it was, the way it was at that time, and the kind of pilot I was. Other people didn't find it that difficult. I used to be, my hand used to be on, after landing on the tail shoot jettison lever. That,
Ah,
and I used to regularly used to get into PIOs on the landing roll with crosswind and other things.
so for the audience who don't understand, can you explain what that is, sir?
That's a pilot induced oscillation. Though I knew that I'm when you give an input, you actually you go out of phase with the aircraft motion. So let's say aircraft is noses go to the left. You give a right input, but you tend to increase the input so much that when it goes to the right, before it reaches that side, you again apply the counter input. So somehow, and the amplitude of that inputs get increasing, and then you can have, but you have training, so you stop, before it goes little. That two inputs you are given, you stop, you just stay put for 2 seconds, and everything becomes normal. Right? It's not that the aircraft was doing it; you were augmenting it. Right? So, and to go through that, and I and I was and I did whatever I could to research this thing, how the nose wheel steer laws are, how is in the 16, which is a similar kind of you know undercarriage. They also have they don't engage in the high speeds. That's what I read that time, that it automatically disengages at high speeds. And we did a lot of trials. We did some trials on the landing road, how to map it and everything. And finally, it took when I came back again after like 2007 and about 2010, 11, I think 11, 12, some of another 5 years, because it's a very minor requirement you test. And it's a very tedious test, steering testing those will steer on ground. You start up, you run up the down the runway, get this input, that input, and say I would say monotonous, but it's hard work. It's hard work.
Understood.
The ground testing of nozzle still is hard work. Running up the down runway and then cooling your brakes and then doing runs. But somehow we had people later on. People also understood that this is the way. And now today, what we have in terms of nozzle steer, the way the slopes are, high speed, low speeds, and everything. And of course, shoot stabilized. Shoot didn't aggravate any longer. The shoot became steady once you deploy. So all those things combined. Otherwise, I used to be quite scared of landing among all the things.
Right, right.
Visual to before your major landing. Just need 70, like your report diving southeast, connection for the midway, and you'll select it.
And was this the first fly-by-wire aircraft that you were flying on a regular basis? I presume you'd flown the Mirage at some point in your career.
Yeah,
Probably the Sukhois also.
no, I didn't. I have not flown Sukhoi as first pilot. Only from the ESC flew. And Mirage, of course, I had flown during the cruise and after that also. And before you start flying the LCA, you were sent to Mirage to fly 3-4 sorties in a fighter also, and to see how the fly-by-wire behaves and feels. But practically, if you have to say that this is the first fly-by-wire.
Mm. What are the major differences you found between say the Jaguar and a fly-by-wire aircraft? Did you feel any sense of loss of control or loss of being directly connected to the aircraft?
You see, like Jaguar, in the sense that first thing, the idea that the stick moves very little, right? So, but it takes you maybe 1 hour or one flight to get used to it.
Okay.
And what's called the beauty of fly-by-wire, what I would say, of or any control system, is that it comes the way you predict it. For a large number of people. You see, like you have a car, for example, or anything which needs to be closely controlled. All the while doing it. And if you have that kind of system, and most of the people feel at home, you know in a very short time, right, irrespective of their backgrounds. And so that's the beauty of the whole thing, I think.
Right.
That we all came from different backgrounds, and this cockpit, we started in this cockpit, and it was a fighter aircraft which we had to fly, right? And it was single cockpit. There were no twin seater where you could get. Of course, the RTS and everything was there, but once you get airborne, it's a different story. So this is the whole thing, that uh, most of the people who came from also many different backgrounds, right? They felt at home in this cockpit, right? And very short time, right? The complexity of whole thing, how quadruplex, this, that, all those theory, and the people who do it finally, a pilot is the least educated person in that whole atmosphere, the person who's flying it today, in the squadron, right?
Right.
And if you can do it with ease, that's the like making the thing simple from that complexity. Right? So that way I think it was amazing to be at home, from the first instant. And I think, and of course, it was much more simpler than Jaguar to fly or to land or take off. Right? And before that, the like as far as once we had the envelope expansion, and when we could do actually aerobatics in this aircraft later, about a decade from then, the most pleasure I had flying in the aircraft was a Hunter, right? And then thereafter, that's the LCA, and the pleasure, the real pleasure of being integrated to the aircraft as if the wings are on your shoulder, you know. So that kind of feeling you get in that, like the machine is not something different from you. Like Jaguar machine was different than me, you know, because it was designed for the to scare the enemy, not to for the flying pleasure. Yeah. So yes, and flying that also beautiful in the sense that there comes a time in your life when you have some experience where you feel that you can do anything with this aircraft. So that kind of high I had, and but this I can relate Hunter, the kind of pleasure I used to get flying, doing aerobatics in Hunter or throwing around the aircraft. Similar kind of pleasure I could correlate 2 decades apart. That yes, this is the thing which actually makes a what's called the flying pleasure.
Amazing. Very nice. Now, so you were involved with some of the high altitude trials for the aircrafts. At what stage did that happen? What do those trials involve at Leh? I know which is a difficult airfield to land at by itself, but in a absolutely new aircraft, what were the precautions that you took? What are the experience that you had?
You see, Leh, we knew that we have to prove this aircraft for the high altitude operations. And can you imagine the first detachment which we took was to go, after we did one detachment in once we level trials. And we had done one at Goa. And then we straight away took this in 2009. And thereafter, I think I've taken LCA there for 4 or 5 times more. So it's nearly 4 or 5 times I've been to what you call Leh with LCA. And first time, like when we went there, like say, I wouldn't say ignorance or enthusiasm or whatever you call it, we were not sure what kind of problems we're going to encounter there, right? The system designers have not, although they knew what kind of temperatures and other things we told whether we are going there, but you see, after all, there's a limit to human imagination in imagining what kind of situations we can encounter. You know, if we could exactly predict how things are going to be, we could design a system for every contingency, and there's no need to flight test, right? So the system designers have put certain limitations. They believed in their systems that, like for example, environment control system. There was a belief that if the environment control system comes up in so and so time, the temperature of the cockpit should rise by so much, right? And when that didn't happen, that system said it has failed, you know,
Aha.
right? So it says that no, it's not possible that I'm not able to do this
Heat
job,
up
which
the
is so such a
cockpit, right?
yeah, heat of the cockpit in this much of time, right? Or the equipment in this much of time, right? So it said I have failed, right? And it just stopped, right? Same thing with the starting system, the viscosity of fluids. I know there are experts who went into it in the first detachment. First time we landed there to take off from there, there was a thought that there was a scare in our heart once that we may have to leave the aircraft here. That whether we'll be able to get out from here or not.
Oh
Yeah,
boy. Mhm.
if we'll be able to start the aircraft or not. You know. And the data being sent from here to there and this and that. And of course, we trained from Pathankot. We operated. We did overshoots at what you call Leh. And same myself that time. Now Himachal Tiwari and Kumaru Mawlankar, three was over there. made the long maps from day to day. And so initially we came back with lots and lots of lessons. First time we came back, and a lot of work to do, right? On our starting and this and whether it's the question of engine loads to increase the what you call and so there was a particular RPM where you advance the throttle. So that thing was changed, to a higher figure that at this place you do this, probably you're going to start better, and that worked, whatever. So for first thing in that cold, in that atmosphere, it was interesting, and we had that, and the clothing, of course, clothing was also on trial, and all the 4 or 5 times when we went there, we kept on improving the winter flight clothing, and and operating from Leh in that atmosphere, and finally the last time when I went there, I think it was in 2000. First time in 2009, and last was in 2016, I think. Yeah, 16. And that was for we took the trainer, and it was in the hot and high conditions. Rather than cold weather have been proven. I want to prove that in hot conditions where the density of it is very high,
Right.
with that load, whether you can lift off whatever the specifications of the load or whether you can lift off or not. So that was in 2016. So that's been an interesting phase of what you call trials, which has been, because going there was also a challenge. We were flying down from Bangalore to first to Pathankot with we used to take a halt at Nagpur, and that was one interesting aspect. The cold weather trial and the high altitude trial, I think, has been one of the most exciting things which we have done. And once we had to leave the aircraft, there was a snow, and we had to leave the aircraft. All of us came back. 10 days, there was no flying and nothing. It was just snow there, and weather playing a part in that. You can't the limitation of weather, in the sense, after some time, when the shadows become more than that, you can't take off. You're supposed to land back before that. So it was planning and executing. It was quite challenging, and flying in that area, and with so much of snow around you, you felt that, and with hardly any features, in terms of mountains. So it was I think it was, and executing a circuit there, it's a typical thing to the straight and approach is very less. Flying in the ball, it is, but like I said, this aircraft is really nice. You can operate in a tight, at a slow speed and execute that circuit.
Right. And also, I presume the moving map and things like that would have given you a good situational awareness of the terrain and things like that, right?
Yeah, yeah, true. That's true. But there, everything is visual.
Ah,
You
right.
got to you got to be visual with everything. Yeah. And if there's a clouding below certain things, at that time at least, it was not permitted to descend below that and try to do anything funny with your initial navigation system or rely on GPS or anything.
Let's move on now to, I think you came from the Jaguar background and you did some of the first air to ground weapons release. So just love to hear what were those trials like? What was your experience doing those? Use of the laser designation pod, things like that.
Yeah, like air to ground has been my bread and butter all my life.
Right.
And and in Jaguar also I did a lot of air to ground trials. So I think I have a reasonable experience and expertise in air to ground symbologies, weapons, and testing them. So it's very interesting that I think that was also in 2009 when else was busy in Aero India quietly, and we didn't want to go to any Air Force range in a big way and do the weapon trial. So Shri Harikota, where the ISRO is there. There was long back. There was a Jaguar trial done there, Darren one Jaguar trial done there, and there has a abundant sort of one corner of that island which they have, and there was still a target. we activated that, and so we want to do it quietly. We didn't want to announce that we are doing any ground trial. It was practice bombs only, you know. And that time, Mr. Jadhav, who is the director in AL now, he was in charge of the weapons, and Mrs. Padmavati, who is in charge of the LCA Mark One now, she was the avionics person who was dealing with all these things. And we had PMT, the group captain PK Singh, in that, who was expert in terms of weapon and safety and other things. Four of us primarily convinced everyone that listen, this we should do and go ahead and do it. And we had boss Yatumra Rohit Verma, who believed that let's execute things rather than keep pending. And while the whole focus was on Aero India, we quietly activated that range, sent the thing, and we dropped the first 25 bomb there on that target, which was reasonably close. Later on, when I was retiring, Mr. Jadhav and presented me a photograph of that first impact of that bomb on that. That they have filmed it, and and so nice. So and from there, Soggy Sunil Krishna was, I think, posted to ASP that time, and he chased me in a Jaguar with Raman Pagatal, and we did that first drop there, Shri Harikota, and thereafter, every 3 or 4 months, there was a weapon detachment. I lost the count of those weapon detachments to Jamnagar, Jaisalmer, uh, Barmer, that is Uttarlai, and every 3 4 months we used to go new weapons, new this thing. In between, we did some work on symbologies and changed the symbology with the lot of deliberations among ourselves, and we what they call the global specifications for the symbology, and then the laser designator pod came in for the laser ranging and integrate. I had done the H1 program on Jaguar for the lightning pod. It's called the H1 program from the Israeli side, and I think LCA was the H6 program. So lightning pod I knew quite well because we worked on it earlier, and then and integrating it in and getting the sensor harmonization, looking at every sensor looking in one place was a big challenge for us to working and try to see that all the ranging sensor which primarily decides when and where to release the weapon, whether it's your altitude, your radar, or your laser ranging or radar ranging, or your radio altimeter ranging, getting that harmonized and to have them deliver the weapon where it's supposed to go has been a quite an exciting journey, and sometimes very frustrating too, because you go again after 6 months, you drop so many weapons, and thereafter you realize, oh, this thing is still not working, or that thing's still not working. And in that we another thing which happened at the human level is that you develop kind of connect with the design team. That has been a quite a rewarding part of my test pilot experience, to having connect with those uh, designers, and discussing with them, sitting with them, day in day out, early morning, and talking to them and having a common sort of goal to achieve. So that I think if I have to say the one thing of my test pilot thing was most rewarding part has been this connect with the designer and team. That human interaction with the people, and the kind of joy you experience when you did something, when it worked, and the kind of frustration and disappointment you experience together. With those chin touching your chest, head hanging, and not looking into each other's eyes when things didn't work out,
Yeah.
and that was going through that highs and lows. I think that's something which you remember. I may not remember the actual incident why it happened, but I remember faces. I remember briefing halls. I remember somebody saying, passing blame to each other, right? In those weaker moments of ours, right? So I think that journey has been along with the aircraft coming up. We also came up in accepting the limitations of ourselves and the designers that too.
Right. And these are the sort of experience you can only have on an indigenous design, because in a foreign bot system, the designer is very far removed from you and you don't have any interaction with them. So,
Yeah, true. That's and that's something which the because finally it's a weapon platform, right? And integrating weapon is the main reason why you exist. Firing weapon is the reason why this platform exists. And to deliver them to the right place is something which is you can never be satisfied by the accuracy of what you can say the drop.
Visual, visual, before the bridge landing. Just need 7B, like your report time to southeast, connection, speed for the midway, and yield selected.
so on that topic, if I can draw your memory back to Iron Fist 2013, you did something quite amazing. I think the first time in public that the Tejas was seen firing live weapons, and you did both a air to surface and then you did an air to air immediately after that. So can you describe that sortie to us? I'm sure it's still vividly etched in your memory.
Yeah, true. Yeah, this was and I'm like I said I'm a what the Yanks would call the mud movers. You know that like I'm a ground type pilot, right? And to and to get a chance to fire a air to air weapon, and that to live on a flare was something which the dream come true. Like it's, I don't know how dreams come true, but that's something which has happened to me again and again in my life. So, and this we went, and the best part is that my first live firing which I was doing. Before that, I practiced on a dummy flare, you know, and that dummy flare was once dropped, and dummy you don't get the real taste of the flare or the first flavor drop. The rate of descent of that flare was more, it was faulty,
Mhm.
but I didn't know. Right?
Okay.
After firing the LGB, you know, the plan was to fire an LGB from about 10,000 feet, you know, and there's a dais. If you're at dais, let's say the LGB target is about 11 o'clock to you, and then from there you turn right in a descending spiral, tighten the turn, descend to low levels in front of the dais, and in front of dais you almost parallel class, continue turning right, and take a lock on the player with your helmet mounted side at the off board side, and then fire it, and it's live. It's there's no like like Victor Airlines who were doing it. They were coming straight leg from behind. The flare was dropped. They were flying wings level, and they fired R-73. Right, but here you are in a cost at about 2 to 3 G, taking lock and firing.
Right.
So that was the plan. So that's first time when I was doing this. That and you're supposed to climb a little bit to get a lock, but because of the rate of descent of this flare was high, I couldn't climb. Right? And in fact, later on, short of firing, I was descending because I was keeping that flare above at a certain place in my cockpit,
Uh-huh.
and I could see ground a little bit coming up. But I said, okay, I'm coming to firing. I'll worry later, and I fired. And I fired. At the moment I saw I fired, I got what do you call? I tightened the turn harder, and thereafter I started climbing. And the way that missile went, it almost went like a sea skimming missile over a desert, parallel to the desert.
Wow.
And I think the flare and the missile hit together somewhere just about 10 feet above the ground or 15 feet above the ground, which we could see. That's the sometimes the ignorance space. Probably if I was wiser, I would have found it. So, and that was really a experience for me and experience for everyone to see that. And big man Ravindran, That day once for the rehearsal when I fired, I came back. He was there in that hotel where we were staying. He saw me and he yelled at me and he hugged me. You know, he said, Raj, the first time I felt with that flare going fatak in front of my eyes, right, with an R73, from where, what the journey we have traveled and where we have come.
Wow.
And so this 2013 Iron Fest was, I think, and we were the only one who were having weapons and still turning inside the danger zone, and the aircraft, although we have very strict places where to, and of course telemetry helps in remembering you when to switch on, because we were turning in front of the dice, pointing the nose of the aircraft towards dice, so there shouldn't be, and you got a missile on the aircraft, and everybody is sitting on that dice, so you have to be means 3,000% sure that there's no switch which is left in any different any position than what it's supposed to be, and that telemetry helps in these kind of things. Even if there's double check, there's a triple check. So 2013, what's called the Iron Fist was really, I would say, if I have to in my life, I have to say one of the highlight of my flying career as a test pilot or as a pilot was to participate in 2013 Iron Fist and Fire. It and not many air defense would have people would have in 2016 also I did the Iron Fist, and not many air defense pilot would have fired so many R-73s which are fired that too in a turn in a maneuvering flight, and at low levels. So that way Iron Fist I think was very dear and very close to me in terms of.
So, sir, you had a couple of emergencies. I just want to draw your attention to that. You had a undercarriage issue in 2010, and then in 2013 you were doing some air brake expansion trials, and then you had a situation where the L1s were moving in the opposite direction. So, tell us about these emergencies. What did you go through, and how did you handle it? What was that experience like?
See this undercarriage thing in 2010. Like I said, I retired in 31st August 2010, and then from 1st of October 2010, I was as a civilian in contract. And this flight was the first flight of mine as a civilian. You know, and that time we had still had the aircraft in kilometers and meters. So the speed was the climb was not in knots; it was in kmph. So and 700 was the kmph, so the climb speed. And I was, and I didn't have my insurance, although one insurance company, because now I had to file my own insurance.
Oh my,
And
okay.
no, I had no insurance company was willing to insure me because they didn't know what they wanted, what is this insurance all about. One company finally agreed, and they didn't give me a policy. Also, they had given me a health cover note. You know what's called in their parlance, that we agreed to this. So with that, I told Ekmor Rohit Verma, listen, I got insurance, and I need to get one. Right? Because he had told me that till the time you are not insured, I'm not allowed to fly. And I said it's been 12 days. I'm 10 days. I've been sitting on the ground, and I should get going. So we flew that, and I was merrily climbing through, I think, 10,000 feet or 3 kilometers or 3.5 kilometers at that speed. And then all of a sudden the hell broke loose. And I heard some sound, and there was a rapid deceleration, and there's some grinding noise and this thing, which is a typical sign of engine seizure, which we have learned. So I looked at the engine parameters, and the aircraft started pitching up quite steeply.
Wow.
So I said, so first thing was to control the pitch up. And I said, if I tell telemetry, what will I tell them? Because engine is fine and aircraft is pitching up. I said, if they are sitting on their tape consoles and looking at the parameters, if they notice something abnormal, let them come up, right? If I tell them, then it may confuse that what I'm going through. There may be a little bit of panic in telemetry. And then I put on bank to control the pickup, and I start looking at what could be wrong. And the good old thing that, please check your configuration, undercarriage flaps, air brakes. And I looked at my undercarriage, and I found they were red. In the sense there should have been no light there. That means undercarriage has come down.
Hmm.
And I think about from that incident to this time, I think about now 20, 30 to 40 seconds must have elapsed. Till the time I'm trying to figure out, and then I'm trying to control, and I'm turning, and I'm looking also. I remember I'm flying in sector where the Krishnagiri Dam is there, and I'm looking that in that turn in the right bank, I'm looking that if I have to eject, where that possibly could be. Right? And meanwhile, as I was about to tell telemetry that this undercarriage, the telemetry called up that it seems that your undercarriage has unlocked.
Hmm.
And I said, yeah, I got these two reds, and this is a thing. And then now my fear was if this doesn't come down, that it doesn't lock down.
Then lock, right? Yeah. Hmm.
Because if there's something, it's supposed to be, speed was 360 kmph, if I'm right, if I remember correctly, or we were at 700. So if there is something damage to it, or something to it, then it may not come down. That was the next. So we dropped speed, it came down, and we landed. But yes, those 45 seconds to 50 seconds were, I would say, where you can see your, where you can hear your heartbeat. Those kind of things. It happens sometimes, and and later on, the cause was found. Whatever the cause was, because of I think there was one. Pouring of washer or something of which caused this some back pressure. The people went into details, and fortunately, we could find the exact cause of it, and so that it doesn't happen again. And this was, and but the most important thing of this flight was more than that. I came back and I really thought, is it worth it? you know, because it's our first flight as civilian. You know,
Yeah.
and
And with that
I
piece of
thought, yeah,
paper of insurance.
insurance. Insurance is fine. Insurance, okay. Your wife will get it. What? The thing is that, and now I was a civilian. If so, and I have not drawn my first pension yet. You know, and there's a family pension. In case something happens to you after then your wife gets a family pension, which is some 40 or 30 or I don't know 50%. I don't know, but that's the amount, right? Let's say if I was in Air Force, if something happens, the pension is different. It's a full pension, right? Now it happens. Although I'm flying doing the Air Force task, but that will be a family pension to provide. And to have the thought, I think the first pension and family pension is not very encouraging. So, so, so I was really wondering, there for a couple of days I really wondered that, oh man, is it, we should be doing it or not? And, but then, yes, I said, okay, let me, then I had a word with my wife, explained to her everything and this and that. And then I said, okay, let me continue.
Okay. How about the air brake issue where you had the elevons moving in the opposite direction? What are elevons for a start for the audience, and then what happened there?
You see, elevons is something like elevate, which primarily give control to your nose up or down, you know. And so we were doing this air brake envelope expansion in terms of, and then we had to see that, and then you had to dive to maintain certain higher mark. Now we are doing, I think this was for 0.95 mark, which was the highest speed for the elevon. And there's a compensation given. It's not the elevon moving opposite direction. There's a compensation given for the air brake requirement. To deploy the brakes, there's a compensation because no pitches up and down. So there is a compensation in the control law, which compensated. Whether it's overcompensated or undercompensated, I don't know. But practically, what happened that if you are in, and we were in a screeching dive to maintain that 0.95 with that air brake out, close to ground, and it's also a combination of Mach number and the speed. So the lower you are, the higher you have speed for the same Mach number. Indicated speed. So we were and we want to do that was I think the 0.95 the highest speed which you can get doing that point close to ground in a dive. And when you want to pull out from dive, actually the nose instead of nose coming up, it went down. Right? So your dive angle increased actually.
Wow. Hmm.
And I think I did twice. I attempted twice to pull out, and when it didn't, when I found the whenever I tried to pull out, it steepens, and there's where is the time to think at that time the way you're closing on the ground. And in parade, there's a very good command which you have, jaise the, or in Windows you have that undo, you know. So jaise the means get back to where you were, right? So I just selected the airbags in, and because that aircraft is proven and pulled out, and in that time there is no in that situation, the person sitting in telemetry cannot help you because it's happening so fast. For him
So
to
fast, right?
analyze the data is not possible, and for me to transmit that what I'm experiencing is not possible.
What altitude were you at when you started, and what altitude did you experience this reverse control?
I think we started from about 15-20,000 feet in a
Oh,
dive
not
to
that
increase the
high.
speed,
Okay. Uh-huh.
and came down to about 6,000, 5,000 feet AGL, where we were about 4,000 feet AGL, and I think pulled out about if I 2,000 or 3,000 feet above ground.
Wow.
So,
That's
so, so,
not a
so there
lot.
is there is no way to transport about the situation. Just go through it and come out, and thereafter I said something. Maybe I said, like I felt funny. That's what I felt while pulling out. I garbled something. While pulling out, I felt this, that, and everything. And later on, when we realized, we found that uh, this is what is happening. And the control law team, working with them, we have been working very closely with them, and personal also rapport with them, professional rapport with them has been exceptionally good for most of us, for all of us, in fact, for all the pilots. And and the biggest compliment which I have received ever as a test pilot is from Dr. Girish Devdhare and his team. They said if like I'm not I don't speak much in the cockpit while flying, and they said when Tyagi says something in the air, right, whether he says in a manner of observation or not, but we take it as observation and we come back and analyze the whole thing, right? Even sometime it may be just a grunt from my side, oh, it doesn't seem good, right? Or there's something of that sort. Say everything, and like I seldom say things in the cockpit. You know? So they say that you compensate for most of things, but whenever you feel that you're not able to compensate, then only you open your mouth. So so they say there's every kind of pilots, who are there. Sometimes people there are some pilots who complain about every small things, right? So that is also good because you know that what is irritating. And but with you, we have it's been a good experience for us that we learned that what is wrong. Although you just made a qualitative comment or just voice or noise or whatever, and it was been a So that was one of the biggest compliments which are and still when I meet them, they always say this. And
Right,
whenever he
right.
said something cockpit, we knew that we have a job on the ground.
Wow, interesting.
Visual show for Emergencies. Just 70, Roger, report time southeast, connection, for midway, and yield selected.
So changing gears now to the engine, I think you were involved with some of the interesting trials around engine distortion testing. So, what is that? How do you do these trials? And also you were doing the relight tests on the engine. That's shutting it down and then starting it again in the air. And so, just love to hear about this work that you were doing on the engine. What are some of these trials? What are these experiences like?
You see, engine testing, the engine and airframe matching. So, like I used to call, like I used to say that we should get some monkeys and train to do engine testing. Because actually, this like you have the engine and you call that cycle. So you hold the throttle at idle for 5 seconds, then bang it to max reheat and hold it there for 5 seconds. Come back to max military or max dry power for 5 seconds. Back forth. So this cycle is about sometimes for 15 seconds, sometimes for 25 seconds, sometimes for 50 seconds, right?
So
And
you're
in
almost
that time,
deliberately abusing the system to make sure
yeah,
that
yeah, you are just banging throttle, against the wall, the back wall and the front wall, right? And somewhere in between, min reheat max, and hold it there, count it, and then bang it again, right? And in that time, for those 25 seconds to 50 seconds to sometimes 50, 55 seconds, if I remember correctly, you need to hold certain parameters, steady, right? Like let's say if you need to hold the speed of Mach number steady, right, then you need to dive the aircraft, because when you're bringing back the throttle, you have no power, so you got to come down, and as you go to the repeat, you need to reduce that dive angle, right, to keep that speed same. So it's a very very dynamic maneuver, and on top of that, then you have to induce side slip into it, so you have to apply full rudder, right,
ah,
and that to opposite side rudder. So you
oh,
are sitting there like doing those monkey tricks
mm,
in the cockpit, and it was really, really, it's like skill, it's your concentration, remembering that throttle cycle. Although telemetry tells you, but if you don't do it, it may be late, and going through that engine cycle, and then holding those parameter constants, applying that full rudder, your right leg is against the wall, your right hand is into your stomach almost in that dive angle, and trying to spiral down and reducing and increasing, and banging throttle up and down. So it was, I think, that was the most one of the most complex test points which you can have. You start from sometime from 49,000 feet, and come down to 20,000 feet by the time you complete it. So that engine distortion testing, where you see that there's no distortion in the engine, and sometimes you get that kind of in the entire envelope. So that engine distortion testing was, I love doing it. I like doing it because and getting it right was so satisfying, so satisfying that you get it right. Because there's a lot of fuel, there's a lot of patience to climb up to that high height and come down. If you have to repeat it, it's a and so Indian distortion testing was quite interesting and quite exciting and quite satisfying in terms of that.
and so now you're giving an engine really to the squadrons where, irrespective of the skill of the pilot, even if they abuse it a little bit, you know that, it's going to. I remember some of the old jet aircraft, you had to handle the engine very carefully, otherwise, you would have a surge or you would have a compressor stall or something or the other. You have to be very careful. I presume with this, you don't have to be.
Yeah, there were some times when the afterburner won't light up, afterburner won't, or you get a little bit of warning or blow out or something like that. But nothing serious, right? There may be spin up, maybe a little bit delayed or whatever, but there's nothing serious. And the engine, I think, this has been one of the biggest blessing of this program. This engine, the G404, has been a big blessing to this program.
Right, right, right. And what were the relight tests like? So, what altitude do you do these tests at, and how do you ensure that if it doesn't relight, you can land back safely or eject? What's the protocol you normally follow?
I think that if it doesn't relight, the thing was reject. There is no landing back, because you won't have the control systems and everything to work on more than that. And so we did. And interesting thing that when we were to do, and we had this committee where I was a member of, to come to a conclusion how to do relight. And I think we did a lot of RTS test, windmilling RPM, this that, and you see now you say hindsight is the only exact science.
Mm,
So we did the relight test, and then the second set of relight test when we were to do, we found that there are certain calculations which we did were not as accurate as we thought they were. And so So switching off the engine and then relighting it. At that time, it seemed that we are doing quite a high risk thing in in the thing. But we had done it, like we had switched off the engine on the ground and taken it back again. Switch off means you just switch off and take it back again. With air flowing, it should work. The
Okay.
main thing was that if you let the RPM drop below a certain point where it can't, you know, relight, to do a startup, what the kind of startup you do on ground in the air, that's the real. That was the real, what you can say, the hurdle.
Hmm.
And if, for example, in air it doesn't pick up, and in this thing in the aircraft where everything is integrated, the control system, the fuel system, the all the environment control system, the software control, and electrical power which is coming from the engine driven things, those disruptions, those were the major things. If in case that those things also, although on the ground we have tested and seen, so that was the major risk. And otherwise, the test point was for few seconds. You just switch off, hold it for I think 3 or 5 seconds in the switch off position, and before the engine RPM can drop below a certain limit, you just push the throttle back,
Hmm.
and as they said, by the book.
Right, right, right. Okay.
But the risk in that was that if it doesn't happen, then I remember that time PDFT was Air Commodore Mathana, and he said till late night. Next day, he said, late night, we were discussing till midnight whether to do this test or not. And all of us were, and then finally, uh, this thing, this was October, first week of October when we did the test in 2013. But that gave a lot of confidence to us. And it also paved the way for the second stage of real life trials.
Well, sir, before I let you go, just wanted to see what are you doing after having left the program? Were you still involved with aviation in some way?
You see, in 2000, like I joined 2010 as civilian. 2017, when I thought I'm getting too old for this kind of flying and may not be able to continue for more than 3 4 years, I decided to once again go to civil airline, and that's when I thought, let's. It was a very difficult decision for me to part ways with where I spent nearly more than a decade, and also a lot of people from ADA, including Dr. Girish Devdare, Air Marshal A.P. Singh, and other people in the Air Force. At that time, Deputy Chief Air Staff was Air Marshal Baduria. They said, "No, please, you should continue now, and see through the end." I said, "Sir, it may not be possible for me to fly like this for very long, and so it's no point at 55. So I think it's the right time now. It's in, and I need to leave." And they agreed, and then I left. Once again, I was going for the civil airline, and then 2017 Aero India, I met up people from a company called Saab, which is a Swedish company,
Ah, right,
and
of course.
they make this Gripen aircraft, and they make everything from fighter aircraft to submarine and things in between. Yeah, security and defense, and they make missiles, they make weapons, and cargo stuff is a good weapon which Indian Army is using for last 30 years, I think. And and I happened to meet them during Aero India 2017, where they had they were bidding for LCA Mark 1A radar and EW equipment, and they saw me in the overall, and they just got hot to me, and they said, "Listen, we are doing this." I said, "I'm leaving in 1 month, so there's no point." Then later on, they called me. They said they said they want to open an office in Bangalore. Would I be interested? So, and being a part in uniform and this thing, and I've seen some people who are in Air Force or in armed forces. They have joined companies, and I never thought that I'll ever join a company like this, and that too a company which is not Indian. you know and I thought about it a lot. Then I said that, listen, these are the companies who have made names internationally, right? They know their stuff. They're making aircraft, which is a good aircraft. I've seen Aero India, and I've seen other things, and seen other things. And they are making such as a defense equipment. They are doing this. In terms of technology, there are certain areas which definitely they have edge over us, right? And we have been doing things in certain manner. I've been with this program for 10 years. We are doing R&D in Sunday, man. Let me see how these guys do it, you know.
Especially
And
a
if I
small
can,
country, it's just
a
amazing
small
what they
country,
put out.
it's 10 million people, right? And they have offices in 30 countries, right? And and I think their turnover is, I think, as good as HL or more than that, right? And I said, let me see, you know, let me take a challenge in my life once again and see how the let me change the end of binocular from tester. Let me become a vendor, right? And see if I can facilitate some technology, some JV, something which is beneficial, win-win for us. Of course, they will do only for business, right? But then business can be much more fruitful if I can facilitate that, right? That was the thought which motivated me to join Saab. And of course, I have learned a lot in terms of I couldn't have asked for a better employer. I don't think there exists better employer than these countries. You know, in terms of work-life balance, in terms of dignity, and other thing, it's been amazing experience. And first 2 years, 3 years were 2 years were really, really interesting in the sense that learning how to do business. And it was disappointing that from sometimes when I see the our procedures and things, the way we do things in India, we want to ensure honesty by procedure, right? Rather than individual accountability, which was a learning from me from this side. And my utopian dream of getting some technology across was trying to work that out was frustrating. And yeah, yeah. So let me see how long I last here, and if there is some breakthrough which comes in my career where we can facilitate something between. We are working on few things, and if that happens, then probably I will see that I would say that joining here have been good. Otherwise, other than having a good employer and a nice work life balance and a uh, good work which pays reasonably well has been what I call shouldn't go waste. We should be till the time something major JV or technology transfer or equipment made which we can make in India happens. We are working on a couple of things. If that happens, yes, I would say that it has been worthwhile. Yeah. So that's what I do. That's what I do presently now. Yeah.
Very nice. And I'm sure the learning's been great anyway, but hopefully something does materialize at the end of it. Super. Sir, I've taken more than an hour of your time. I want to thank you for your service. I want to thank you also for all the time you've taken to speak to me today. But I have one last question before I let you go. So, it's a fighting platform, it's now in service. You're a fighter pilot. If you were to go into battle with the platform that has been developed, what would be your assessment of its ability to hold its own, to deliver surface weapons, or in an air to air mode, given the threat environment we face in the subcontinent?
You see, the thing is that in terms of air to ground weapons, like I have done almost most of testing, I can say, and in terms of delivery, I think it can deliver what it's made for. Right? There's no question that it will not be able to deliver. Uh, Anyway, the long range. In fact, in my 10 years, I don't think anybody has flown more LCA than me. Uh, Even in now in this one also, I've flown more than 650 flights on this. Right? And in terms of weapon platform, it's a very what I say lean, mean fighting machine. You know, the whole integrated package. And the Mark 1A is another improvement aligned with electronic warfare, which is a important aspect. I think that electronic warfare capability makes the complete thing of it in terms of going into battle. The in Mark 1A, the electronic warfare capability is what I would say is a little bit lacking, which has been completed in Mark 1A, which is the next this thing. With that capability, I think it can hold us ground anywhere, anytime. There's no question. Right? And the the fusion of all things combined. The fusion of all things combined. Uh, it's I left in 2017. It's been 4 years. I think things have people who have been there. Some of my colleagues, ex-colleagues, some of my uh, eh, younger ones who are there, and the way they are working on it. I think we are improving day by day, and that's the thing today. The essence of thing is that you have to. One of the days where you upgrade your aircraft, life cycle upgrade in 5 years or 10 years. Today, the aircraft is like to be, like I would say, like an iPhone, where you need to have a new app every 6 months to keep that, right? And being your own aircraft, probably you can do it, right? So that's the biggest advantage of it. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you, sir. On that note, I'm going to thank you for your time today and wish you the very best. Jai Hind, sir.
Thank you so much, Jai.
Visual to for visualize. Just 70, Roger, report time southeast, Greenwich, for midway, and field selected.
Well, folks, that's all we have time for this week. Join us again next week. In the meantime, sign up for updates at blueskiespodcast.com. There you'll find links to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can also write to us with your comments, questions, suggestions, and feedback from the website or to blueskies@prganapati.com. Subscribe to the podcast on any podcasting platform such as Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and even on YouTube. If you like what you heard, share it with your friends, give us a rating in your favorite podcasting app, and write us a review. It will help other people find us. I want to give my thanks to Saurav Chordia for our logo and Prithvik for the music. I want to reiterate that all the views expressed here are personal, and this podcast has not been approved by or reviewed by the Air Force, Ministry of Defense, or any branch of the government. In the meantime, stay safe and Jai Hind.